Hello and welcome to The Little Simple Life, a podcast about living your most intentional, inspiring life. I'm Amy, 30-something mum of two living just outside London. These podcasts are love notes from me, sharing the things I know I would want and sometimes need to hear. In these episodes, I'm going to delve into what it means to walk a different path, from educating our children outside the school system to living in a small home by choice, surrounding ourselves with a life of intention instead of living a life of default. I welcome you to come on this journey with me, to open your heart and mind to a different way of living. I hope you find what you are looking for with the words of these podcasts, and I hope they speak to you in your own unique way. Hello and welcome to today's episode. Today I want to talk about the radical act of being a stay-at-home parent. It's funny, it's not something I ever really considered in the past, but when I had my daughter 3 years ago, I took an extended maternity leave of 15 months and I didn't really know if I ever had the intention of returning to work afterwards. I'd worked for myself for many years as a freelance writer, social media consultant, and a personal brand strategist. I always felt like I had great freedom in my work because I worked for myself. When I went on maternity leave before having my daughter, I had every intention of not returning. 15 months was a wonderful time with my daughter. But then the pandemic hit. Incidentally, at the same time, I was due to come off maternity leave. And I changed my mind a little bit. There were a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons was my husband had to take a pay drop, a considerable pay drop, 40%. It's a lot. It's a real lot. But also for the first time in a while, I really felt like I wanted to do something for myself again, especially to take my mind off the pandemic. I still had the privilege of being that parent that stayed home. I was able to do some work for myself in the evenings, and I helped contribute financially at a time where things were just a little bit more uncertain for us. As time went on, I found that my unpaid work, the work of being home with my toddler, it was all consuming, and I found it really difficult to carve out the time to do my paid work, especially when my heart was more in parenting and not really in my paid work anymore. When I think about it, and I think about how I said before I had my daughter that I wasn't going to return to work, I felt like I was done with it. I felt like 15 years had passed at that point. I felt like I contributed everything I had to it. But I carried on until I went on to maternity leave with my son, and my son was born in May 2021. This time, I have no plans to return to work. I have no plans to pick up the social media writer, personal brand strategy work that I had previously done. I really am done with it. Sometimes it's easy to go back to because it's like a comfort blanket. I know what I'm doing, I know where to look for work, and I know where to get work. But I don't love it. And if I don't love it, then it's time to move on from it. But all of this got me thinking about how being a stay-at-home parent is not really the societal norm anymore. In fact, it's becoming quite a radical choice within our parenting. Late last year, I had an appointment. It was all part of my postnatal pelvic issues, just a bit sore and not really recovering with a bit of an unstable pelvis. As part of the introduction, we went through a few things about me so I could get the best out of the service. And one of the questions I was asked was, what do I do? What do I do? It was at that moment that I realised, why are we always so defined by the job that we do? It was nothing against this service in particular because it's a common question that we get asked a lot. We meet somebody new. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a XYZ. We're defined by our jobs. For the first time, I proudly said that my job was being a stay-at-home parent. And it's not that I'm even ever ashamed by it, but it's just one of those things that can be taken either way. And in some situations, still, it's consistently looked down on by some people. That ends up irking me every time I have to try and justify it. I've worked so hard for many years, creating my own business from scratch. A business that thrived, a business that I loved. I might not love it anymore, but that's just the natural progression of life. I'm still so proud of everything that I achieved. Being a parent that stays home with their children is a whole job, and it's just as valuable as being the parent that goes out to work. There is no us versus them. Some of us parent full-time at home with our children 24/7, and some of us parent full-time from the office or the home office while working for ourselves or someone else. It feels like returning to work is the norm now, and staying at home is a radical act. Listen, I get it. Capitalism. Capitalism wants us to work. It needs us to work. It needs us to work so that we earn the money so that we can consume the things to keep society going. That's how a capitalist society works. So often I speak to mums who are returning to work and they just don't want to. Mums who tell me that they wish they could home educate their children, that they don't believe in the school system but they don't see another way. Mums who have to return to an office, who have to work because society has taught them that they need to reach for the most biggest and better thing that they possibly could. They're trapped in mortgages that cost so much that one income isn't enough. They're paying for cars that a capitalist society told them that they needed. So they have car payments and one income just isn't enough. And you know what? Sometimes one income isn't enough. I am so aware that I speak from a place of privilege. And I am also well aware that that could change at any moment. Before we had children, when we first got married, and let me tell you, discussions happened even before that. We knew the kind of life we wanted to set up for ourselves. And although things never quite go to plan, we had a rough idea of what we wanted our life to look like. We knew we wanted to only have one child. That panned out well, didn't it? What actually happened was we later decided we wanted two, and that I would stay home with them. I wanted to stay home with them, and we were really passionate about home educating them and not putting them into any formal school or educational setting. And we wanted to set up our life to facilitate that. These things are paramount to us, and while I'm acutely aware of the privilege I'm afforded in being able to do this, it's not by accident either. So often the media, or social media, portrays parents who choose to stay at home as parents who sit around socialising, drinking tea or coffee. It's viewed as the lesser of the two options. It's never celebrated. It's rarely considered a legitimate career choice. In fact, if anything, it's an incredibly undervalued way to spend your time. We chose a slower, smaller, more intentional way of life. We chose to purchase a home that we loved, but also one that didn't overstretch us financially. We have never factored my income into what we need to survive. This way, we never have had to worry about whether I work or not. It's a privilege, I recognise that. It's important to us that we prioritise this way of living over everything else. So often in our lives, we're almost conditioned to want the next bigger, better thing, a bigger house, a newer car, constantly creating a bigger and better and more expensive life that we inevitably end up needing two incomes to be able to support. This way of living is so deep-rooted, it is so ingrained. It is expected that this is the way that we should live and raise our children. For many, the idea of home education really interests them, but it feels so far out of reach. They are trapped in this capitalist way of life that means they have to have two incomes, and they can't deny the free childcare that the school system offers. There are home educators that manage to get around this. Education isn't a 9 till 3 thing. If you need to work a job, there are ways you can home educate around that. There are hundreds of families that have both parents working. They make it work. It is possible. But the system doesn't make it easy for you. I wish there were more flexible options for parents, more ways in which they were able to educate their children in the way they see fit and not in just the way that the government sees fit. Unfortunately, I don't think these flexible school options will ever exist. That's not the way that school was set up. School was set up for a reason, and it works to that intention every single day, and it has done for so many years. Home education is a radical act. Being a stay-at-home parent is a radical act. Living a slow life is a radical act. Bucking against oppressive systems like consumerism and capitalism, the education system, they're radical acts. Walking a different path to the societal norm and not wanting to keep up with the majority brings up so many questions for so many people. It's not normal. It doesn't look normal, but it feels normal. And do you know why it feels normal? Because it's the way we were supposed to live. Walking your own path, outside of the norm, it seems to awaken something in others that makes them think that your choices directly question theirs. I can't help it if my way of parenting and living gets other people's backs up or makes them feel like their own choices are being attacked. It is certainly not my intention. Instead, it's about creating a life that doesn't look good, but it feels good from the inside. Being that stay-at-home parent is a radical act, and I'm so excited to carry on this journey. I want to ask you as well, how do you feel about the current education system? How do you feel parents are represented when it comes to picking a form of education for their children? Would you educate your child outside the system? Does the fact that school essentially offers free childcare solidify your choice in the school system? I'd love to know what you think. Thank you so much for taking the time today to listen to this podcast. Your comments, your love, your support on everything I do is so appreciated. If you have a moment, I would love if you could leave me a review, a rating, a comment. Send me a message on Instagram. Community is so important and I love connecting with all of you. Thank you so much, and I will speak to you all in my next episode.